everyone, welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the best version of you. Today we're going to be talking about emotions. Specifically, we're going to be talking about anger. But before we get into it, how are you doing, Cesar? How was your week?
It's pretty good. Got some good video edits done, and now we're here getting this podcast started. We were coming up with some ideas earlier this week about today's podcast, and we actually thought of this last night. I don't know, we were kind of in the middle
we thought about this podcast idea last night because Cesar made me angry, and because he swore that I made this error when it comes to our descriptions of the podcast, the about me's on all of the different platforms, and I didn't make the error, but he swore I did, which made me quite angry because I was like, I know I didn't mess up. So yeah, that's how Cesar
that's how it started.
Thought about it, and then when we thought of the idea, then we got angry again because we brought back up the situation that he thought that I messed up and I didn't mess up. So yeah, that's how it came to be. It stemmed from anger. But yeah, what did you do this week?
I edited some videos, some content, and I edited some more videos actually that I'll be putting on my channel. And yeah, I set up this podcast. I mean, we haven't gone out this week at all, besides going to CJ's once maybe, but
yeah, Cesar and I love going to this place called CJ's Italian Ice here in Vegas because they have the best pineapple Dole Whip with mango ice and tahini and chamoy, and it tastes so freaking good. I just love it. But for those of you who don't know, Cesar does create content on his own too. Obviously, he's a part of this podcast, but he creates content on his YouTube channel about technology, camera equipment. He's very savvy with all that kind of stuff, and he's learned a lot in the past 5-6 years of creating content for other people. And I think you work with a couple other people right now where you're editing videos.
Yeah, currently editing content for some YouTubers out there. Also, I will have an episode out on our setup here. I recorded it last week and I'm getting it finalized. So if you guys are interested in wanting to start your own video podcast, I'll have a link hopefully down in the description of this video on YouTube.
I mean, it probably won't be in the description of this video because this video will go out before.
Oh yeah, or I'll comment on this video, one of the two. Either way.
But anyway, today we're talking about anger. And specifically, it's okay to be angry sometimes. So I was actually doing some research when Cesar brought up this idea of anger and just learning about anger. Obviously, we all know what anger is. We all know that emotion. I think as humans, we feel that emotion. But I also I wanted to see if there were any benefits of getting angry, when you get angry, you think it's a negative emotion, but it's not always negative. And that's because anger can help us identify problems or things that are hurting us. It helps motivate us to create change or achieve our goals. And it helps us stay safe and defend ourselves in dangerous situations. And this is according to mind.uk.org. And I thought that was interesting because I guess anger is essentially part of your fight or flight response as well. Did you know that?
I've heard other things about it, but not specifically that.
Yeah, it's a part of our fight or flight response. So, and I think me and you were kind of discussing this when we were discussing this idea last night was anger can, Anger can develop into different emotions. And sometimes those emotions are good. I feel a lot of times when I get angry, it's driven by passion for certain things,
Mm-hmm. I could see that, especially I'm trying to remember the last time you got angry, but just last night, you were talking about, but yeah, I can see especially if you're passionate about some sort of subject matter or maybe something you're doing in your life, and if someone says something that I guess is I don't know if the word is countering what you're thinking or whatever the case is, you can get angry over that and be passionate about that anger because you're no, you're wrong.
I don't think it's passionate about the anger. It's you're passionate about the idea, and sometimes the way it comes off is anger. So I think the huge thing when it comes to anger is how we react to certain situations. like, I think you brought this up before. Oh, what's it called? I literally have had such bad brain fog lately. What's it called? Road rage. Remember you were telling me about road rage and how people here, like, road rage has literally caused, like deaths, you know, like, people, like, getting out and, like, hurting someone because of, like, just getting cut off in traffic, you know?
Yeah. I think I remember talking to you about this. Like, I feel like, depending on, especially in cities, like, people can tend, not everyone, but there are some people out there that are, like, literally just, they're like one thing, or like they've had built up so much, like,
they
anger,
have, like, so much fire inside.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
then, like, one thing, and then, like, one thing just sets them off and, like, makes them do something extremely crazy that can hurt not only themselves but other people, innocent people in that case. But yeah,
literally an example of this just happened yesterday in LA with that ICU nurse. She was an ICU.
Oh, she was an ICU nurse.
Yeah, she was an ICU nurse. And I guess she had gotten into an argument with her partner and drove, like, I guess she was under the influence. I don't know if she was under the influence. She might have, I think you told me she was, but I don't know. I was reading an article on it yesterday. And yeah, she, like, it was a reaction of, like, I'm guessing anger.
Some
like,
kind
her
of
driving
some
and, like,
situation that broke out, yeah.
And obviously that ended in a lot of people dying. Like, she killed a lot of people, and now she's gonna be, you know, paid for it.
It's crazy because she didn't. I think she was hoping she was gonna die, and she didn't die or something. That's just crazy. She was going, like, over 100 for sure in the video. It's just,
oh yeah, I saw the video.
It's just like you just barely see the car. It's like that blurry. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like there's situations that just drive, like, people on the brink of self-destruction, or,
yeah,
you know, like,
I was actually reading about that too. It's like how we react to anger. Like, some people, it's self-destruction. It's like, oh, I hate myself. Oh, I want to harm myself. They turn the anger inwards. And then other people, it's like destruction outwards and, like, negatively impacting others around you. But I think it all has to do with how we react, which is why anger is not necessarily a negative emotion, because it depends on how you react with anger. Like I said, like, sometimes when you're angry that, like, someone doesn't believe in you, or, like, you know, is hating on what you have to do, that motivates you to just continue doing it, to go at it 100%.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it might just make you hate that person or see them in a different light, or, like, do things that aren't necessarily great things, I guess. But whenever I think about, like, emotions, I think of that. Have you seen that movie Inside Out?
No, you were talking about this earlier.
I feel like we watched it together.
No, maybe, like,
we'll have to watch
maybe
it today.
A clip or two.
The emotions inside, obviously everyone, but it's specifically in the movie, it's this, like, kid. I think her name's Riley, and that you have, like, anger, happiness, sadness, disgust. And it shows you, like, the role that each plays in, like, this girl's life. It's so good. I don't know. It's kind of related to, like, the situation of, like, when we talk about emotions, when we talk about anger. It's funny how it's portrayed, too, in, like, media, or, like, how we see it as individuals. Or, like, you know, in the episode of The Office when Jim is messing with Andy and hit his cell phone. And
For some reason think it's funny to steal someone's personal property and hide it from them. Here's a little news flash. It's not funny. In fact, it's pretty freaking unfunny.
And then he goes, I've been sent to management classes. He was like, well, anger management classes. So it's really how you deal with anger. I can admit that I don't always deal with anger. I think the dangerous thing with anger too is that anger can become your go-to emotion, and if it's your go-to emotion to just, instead of any other emotion, that's where it can get dangerous. If, like, little things start making you angry, you know?
Yeah, then you I mean, I'm not the type of person that's like, the littlest things make me angry.
He says that, but then he was like, oh, they're so stupid.
No, I mean...
What do you think that emotion is when you're saying, this is stupid?
I wouldn't say that specifically. When me and you talk about confidentially, whenever we're, like, in a scenario and I speak out and I'm like, oh, that's dumb, or, like... Or when we're driving, I'll give you a good example. When we're driving and somebody, like, does something stupid, like they cut off someone, and, like, I see it, like, 2 car lengths ahead, and I'm like, I have my foot ready on the brake. and like you see the guy honk or whatever it is, and I'm like, damn, that was dumb. Like, oh wow, like I just like that's stupid. Like that's.
But what do you think that emotion is? I think that's what you're doing. Is like you're angry about it. You're
I'm just like I guess. Yeah,
but you don't think that you're angry. But I know you're angry. You'd be like, oh, because I see the way that you react to things. You'd be like, oh, I was so stupid to that person. Like, oh, dang idiot. And it's like it's not the most. It's not the worst thing. It's anger. Like, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's anger. It's anger that, like, someone would do that because not only are they putting themselves at risk, they're putting other people at risk. Which is, in that sense, it goes back to fight or flight. Like, you have these emotions because like what that person did is a threat to your safety. So in that case, it's not bad to get angry in the situation, but it's also how you react afterwards too. Like, if someone were to cut you off and like we didn't get into an accident, but then you start following that person to their destination and then get out of the car and start like yelling at them, that's a different thing. And I do know people that have.
By the way, I've never done that. It's just I don't know. It's just
I know. I said that's a different thing. If you did that,
dumb. That's exactly. That's dumb. That's what I'm saying. Really
I do know someone in my life that has done that. I won't mention who they were, but looking back on it, like when it happened, I didn't recognize it as like such a bad thing to do. But now when I look back at the situation, I'm like, oh, that was for sure very stupid. Because you also don't know how the other person is going to react. And you could be putting yourself in greater danger when you react out of anger. Yeah. I think a good, like, this is where my retail experience is, like, so important. In retail, you're taught how to, like, de-escalate situations. Like, you do de-escalation training. And a lot of people will get angry over what we feel are small things. Like, this said 98 cents and this now is doing it for $1.25. Change it. And if you don't change it, which most of the time we would, they get so angry and start yelling and you're just like, okay. But I've also found that, like, when you're trying to de-escalate situations and you're remaining calm and you're being nice, sometimes it makes people even angrier.
Yeah, because they're they're trying to. I mean, the whole point of at least in those situations, 'cause I do remember my retail days too. Even though you laugh,
Cesar didn't work retail. You worked at AutoZone. That's a different type.
Sonny, think about this for a second. Think about this for a second. You're talking about AutoZone, an auto parts store, right? Hear me out. Hear me out, people. No, seriously. You're talking about an auto parts store where a majority of people, I don't know what the demographics are nowadays, but majority of people that went in there were like older men that were usually like getting off of work, pissed off. This is the east side of Las Vegas, by the way.
Lots of testosterone.
Yeah, like angry about the parts on stock. They get super pissed off. Like, another thing too, I was telling Sonny, this is before COVID was even a thing. This is like years ago. You would, like, the person that you're helping would be literally like
right next to you.
Like this. Because the computer was right there and they would want to see the screen.
I mean, it's still like that. Like, it's
no, they have barriers now.
Not in all of them.
Not all of them. I know, or they have that little divider thing. It's like
those might be down now because some stores have taken those down.
Yeah, for all I know, they probably have taken them down. But so that, like, whenever, like, literally, like, I remember one time a customer screaming in my face about us not having a part in stock, and I was just like, I can send you to another store. Like, I just kept it very calm and collected because that's what I learned, and they got even more mad, like exactly what you were saying, and I'm like, yeah, I can.
It's crazy. Like, when there was one Sarah, this is turned into like complaints podcast, but
well, it's all about anger at the end of the day. So.
There was this one lady when COVID first started. I worked in a very small Target in Tallahassee, so we were a small format store, a quarter the size of a regular Target store. And we were in a college town, so we had most of, like, the college necessities. We had groceries, but we also had furniture, clothes, that kind of stuff. And when the pandemic started, we had to transfer to, like, online schooling, which means a lot of people needed, like, webcams or, like, more specifically professors, because most students had, like, the webcam built into their laptop. But there were some professors, I guess, that needed one, and someone did, like, an order pickup for one. And the way that works is it goes to the system and we pick the order. But if we can't find the item, stores aren't perfect. Sometimes the counts are off. If it said that we had two and we actually only had one and then we sold one, it still thinks we have one, so it'll let you purchase one online, essentially. Well, we didn't have one. I couldn't find the order. Like, whenever a team member was doing the orders, they would have to come check with me if they had an item they couldn't find to cancel the order, because we had to make sure, because that's like a metric that Target monitors. So I remembered that order from earlier when I first got into work, and I was like, yeah, I looked everywhere for it. We have like a little RFID gun like for electronics to see if it's anywhere near. Checked the entire store. We did not have this item. We didn't have any webcams in stock. And we canceled the order, obviously, because we didn't have it. And the woman, I guess, who ordered it came in and was like, I ordered this online and canceled my order. And she thought I was just not wanting to sell her the webcam was the whole situation. She was like, she literally looked at me and said, do you know who I am? And I said, no, I don't know who you are. And she's like, I'm a professor, and she's just yelling at me. And I'm like, for one, you would think if you're a professor at university, you'd be a little bit nicer, wouldn't you? Like, this is like, wouldn't you want to like portray yourself in a nice manner? But she was so rude, and she legit thought that I was just keeping stuff away from her. And that was a huge experience in like the pandemic. A lot of people would come in or for cleaning supplies that we didn't have any of. They'd be like, I know you got some back there. I'm like, why would we not want to make money? Like, Target wants to make money. If we had the product, it would be on the floor. Trust me, that's the first thing that goes out in the morning. And like, we had limits, and people would get so upset, like, why can't I buy all of them? Well, because we're fair and we want people to be safe. And it was so crazy dealing with people that were angry, and even when you're nice to them, they just don't seem to care. Even when I worked retail, because I basically worked retail for like 5 years before, like, you know, through college and before college too. And whenever people were mean to me, I was just like thinking to myself, how would you feel if someone treated you like this or treated your children like this? So it's funny. I know people are doing it out of anger. They're reacting very quickly to situations. But working in retail definitely made me consider like how I treat people, like outside, like when I'm at a restaurant, even when I'm mad, or like we went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and there was like no sauce on my wings. So I am what you would say a wing connoisseur. I love wings. Honestly, I want some right now. But Cesar and I go to Buffalo Wild Wings pretty frequently, and like we'll go on their deal days, like when they have like Tuesdays and Thursdays they have like BOGO wings, and like Tuesdays is BOGO bone-in wings, so like traditional wings. And so this wasn't a Tuesday or Thursday. On those days I expected to be busy because of the deal. Well, we went on a Saturday. It wasn't too busy. They brought me my wings, and I ordered hot wings, and there was like barely any sauce on these.
Like they ran out or something. Like they
yeah,
just
and
forgot.
I was so angry because I was like, I can't eat these wings. I was like, I want to be saucy. Like I was so hungry too, so I was like, and I didn't get mad at the woman, but I'm sitting at the table waiting for the waiter to come back so I can ask her for some more sauce. And I'm like shaking. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I'm just mad. How would they think that this is okay to bring me wings that look like this?" Like.
This is also Sonny, who's also very hungry too.
Yeah, so. I was starving, so I was hangry. But I also was like, I'm not gonna yell at this woman. I'm not gonna be that person. So like when she came to the table, I was like, "Hi, can you give me some more wing sauce? Because there's like no wings on here. I mean, not wings. I was like, there's no sauce on here." But I was so polite.
It's like your retail. It's like your retail. I was like, thanks.
But I was inside. I was so angry because I was like, this is just ridiculous. These wings are not wings. And in retrospect, it was something so silly to get angry about, but I also was starving and I was looking forward to some saucy wings. But you know, you got to control how you react in those situations. Yeah. So like when I'm out in public like that, if it's an issue with like a waitress or like someone, a cashier, you know, I don't get angry because a lot of times it's not their fault. Like to get angry about a cashier, about a price of something, they don't make the prices.
And then my thing is even if it was their fault, like what if they mess something up and they don't want to own up to it, I'm just like, dude, like it's just, you're coming. I'll just go somewhere else. Like, okay, fine, you don't have it. Like, I'll just order it online or something. You know, like, yeah. For me, that's the thing. Like, whenever I would see someone get angry at like a retail worker or me being the retail worker, it was always to me it showed more about who they actually are. If they're getting angry at some random stranger they don't know. Yeah. Like imagine like them at home if they have kids or their wife or girlfriend or whatever the case is, and that shows more about who they are versus like anything else. So with me, whenever I ran into situations like that, I would just be calm and collected. I'd be like, yeah, cool, like, well, yeah, like I would just, and that would piss them off, like you said. Yeah, it would get them really mad, and I'm just like, okay, like, what do you want me to do? Like, they want a reaction.
I can't do anything.
I can't do anything about it. So
I did think that it was interesting that I was reading on Psychology Today. prolonged release of the stress hormones that accompany anger can destroy neurons in the area of the brain associated with judgment and short-term memory and weaken the immune system.
Oh, wow. So staying angry can get you sick.
Yeah, so being angry all the time, or like, because often stress too induces like anger, like if you're super stressed. I think all emotions go hand in hand, right? So like anger is often accompanied by other things. So you might be angry because you're so stressed and overwhelmed. So, but yeah, it actually weakens the immune system. So I thought that was interesting, the physical impact certain emotions can have. It's the same with anxiety and depression. When you're really anxious, it can have physical ailments, I guess. Like when I'm anxious, when I get really anxious, my stomach starts to hurt so freaking bad. Or other things, or I get really bad headaches. And I'm like, that is so crazy how an emotion so strong can have that impact on your body.
Yeah, it's an internal, like, not only is it an internal like thing you're feeling, but you're actually like showing it externally. I think we talked about that.
I think it has to do with hormones too. Like I was talking to my sister who's in nursing school, and I've been having issues with like weight gain and like dry skin, and they thought it was my thyroid because often your thyroid is associated with these certain things, and like what I was feeling, extreme fatigue, is associated with like hypothyroidism. And I was like, oh, so I tested it, and at one point like my levels were pretty high, but then I tested again and they were normal. So I was telling my sister like, oh, I don't know like why it was abnormal before and now it's normal now. And she was also saying that high levels of stress like produce, I think it's a hormone called cortisol, and like that can also like impact like weight gain, fatigue, all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting how these emotions like relate to like different hormones in your body and like the releasing of hormones. And I was also looking, and I feel like this is kind of not common knowledge, but it makes sense, is men often like feel anger more because of like the testosterone, and not just because of the testosterone, but like men, I guess, when their masculinity is in question, they're more likely to feel anger, which is interesting. I was like,
that's very interesting. Never heard of that either.
But yeah, because I was looking, there was a bunch of like questions like on this page, and it was like, how does anger differ between like men and women? And it's like when you bring gender into the mix, it's a whole different thing too. But yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think it makes you think about how you react in certain situations, because I feel like I said, anger itself is not a negative emotion to feel. It's absolutely how you deal with anger, and not letting anger be that only emotion you feel. Because one of the downsides of like prolonged anger is not just the physical part of it, but often it'll block out your ability to feel any other emotion. So all you ever feel is anger, and if all you ever feel is anger, well, that's not super healthy either. You gotta feel. I feel like, to talk more broadly about emotions are like what make us who we are, and we need to, it's kind of how you need to, the ability to feel is essential, because if you have no feeling in your hand, you won't know when you burn it. So the same way with emotions, like if you don't feel these emotions, you won't know like how to react in certain situations or what to do in certain situations. Our emotions kind of direct us in a sense.
Yeah, they kind of tell us, like, if we're in pain, for example, like, if you put your finger on the stove, your body's like sends that signal to your neurons like, hey, it's hot, and that's like a feeling of pain. If you can't feel pain, like, you're gonna keep your hand there, and that's crazy, because there's actually people that don't have either they lost their sense of like their neurons or nerves in their hands, and like they actually have to be really careful like when it comes to hot stuff, because like they've burned their hands.
That's why your mom can flip the tortillas.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the thing. Over time, you end up like burning that off, I guess.
I did that from like straightening my hair. I would burn the shit out of my fingers whenever I straighten my hair, and now like they're not as sensitive to burns.
It's like you just get used to it, but it's crazy to think about that. There's people out there that don't have like any sort of feeling to pain, like physical pain, like whether you poke them and like.
Yeah, but that's why that's also why like pain is like physical pain is so important, because if like you chop off your arm, you'd want to know, like, if you don't feel like, if you cut your arm open and you don't feel it, you could, like, bleed out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't even know that you're... No, seriously, yeah.
Which makes me think of this conversation we were having yesterday. Cesar and I were getting Starbucks, and our Starbucks close to us is right near a hospital, like, right there. And Cesar was like, oh, I bet I could get you to the hospital quicker than an ambulance, like, could. And I was telling him, like, well, there's certain situations where you might not want to move me. I don't know, like, I've got hurt. And, like, Cesar and I just started talking about...
Or just hypotheticals, you know? Yeah, my mind sometimes goes, like, you know, like, the distance between...
It was like, I need a trauma kit.
Yeah, no, all these things. It's just, that's, if you always ask me, like, what's going on in your head? What are you always thinking about? I was like, I'm thinking about all the randomest stuff, like how long does it take for you to get a point A to point B? Could you beat this car faster? Like, so much random stuff's going on in my head.
But I think it's interesting too, though. Like I feel like that's not something that we teach kids, or I didn't learn it at least, of like how to regulate your emotions. I think being able to regulate your emotions can help you understand them better. I remember being a kid, and like whenever I would cry, my dad would say, like, stop crying, like, don't be such a baby, or not really validate my emotions, so I didn't understand why I felt the emotions. Mm-hmm. And so then I associated that emotion with, like, being stupid or silly or over dramatic, when at times, like, crying can show that you're in pain, and, like, you need to recognize that to understand and cope with what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, especially kids, you know, I mean, that's crazy. Like, I mean, I've heard a lot of stuff more recently about, like, things that you should do, especially when kids are, like, either, like, you know, they've hurt themselves or they're showing emotions. It's like, one thing is, like, to not validate what they're feeling. It's like, you know, you should ask them, like, hey, what's going on? Like,
yeah, like,
oh, maybe they stubbed their toe, or they, you know, hurt themselves somehow. And you gotta
explain the emotion to them, because they're so young. Like, I think of my sister's daughter, Jezebel. Sometimes she gets really upset when Rihanna says, like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. But it's not, Rihanna does a good job of explaining why you can't do that. Like, if she wants to jump off the couch, she's like, you can't do that because if you get hurt, it's going to hurt your arm, and, like, you're not going to like that feeling. You're going to get injured. You got to be careful. So explaining to her, and also explaining what they're going to understand, because, like, when you're 3 and 4, you don't understand the consequences of your actions, but you might not also understand why you feel what you feel, or you get angry at something you shouldn't get angry about because you don't know, like, how to express your emotions. So, like, rather than saying don't be angry, be like, hey, like, this is not something we need to get angry about because it's okay. Like, explaining why you shouldn't get angry. And I think just knowing how to understand your emotions is not something widely taught. I think a lot of adults, I know I don't necessarily know how to regulate my emotions properly, and understand them properly. But yeah, it's so important, especially with anger. Like, anger sometimes, like I said, it's just, we get angry about silly things. When I think back to, like, times I got angry, most of them are like water in the bridge. Like, it's not a reason to be angry. But I think the other thing too is, and I was reading this, and this hit close to home to me because I know I'm so guilty, but anger can lead to, like, resentment, and you start to feel, like, negative things. Like, you want bad things to happen to that person, or you want them to feel what you feel, like sad, hurt. I feel like sadness also goes with anger. Like, when you're really sad, sometimes it can turn into anger because of the person who hurt you, you know, and trying to, like, keep those two separate is very difficult. I was reading before we started, or listening to this video, and it's called, have you ever heard of this story called The Snake and the Saw?
No.
Oh, dude, it's so good.
I want to share with you a powerful story about a snake and a saw. Before you question what a snake and a saw has to do with your life, it is about much more than a snake and a saw. It's about what happens to us when we react in anger. It's about what happens to us when we hold on to resentment and when we don't let go of negative emotions. It's about what can happen to us when we want negative things to happen to others. So the story is this. One night after closing time, a snake found its way inside a home improvement store. As the snake slithered around, it clipped itself on a handsaw that was lying on the ground. Thinking the saw was a threat, the snake instantly snapped around and bit the saw. Of course, this caused much more damage, with the snake cutting inside its mouth. Not understanding what was happening, and thinking the saw was an enemy, the snake wrapped its long body around the saw, attempting to suffocate it. Of course, the snake didn't do any damage to the saw. Instead, ended up being killed by the sharp blade of the saw. The snake ended up being killed by its own anger, by its own reaction to something it thought was out to get it. There's a powerful message here. Often we react in anger when we think others have hurt us, or when we assume that others are out to get us. We react when we don't need to. We hold on to resentment, and sometimes we hope the other gets hurt. But in doing so, we only end up hurting ourselves. The negative energy we carry around when we hold on to these resentments and negative feelings only makes us suffer. Never the person we might want to suffer. When we react in anger rather than with compassion, no one wins. When we snap back, we can't win.
So, like, I think that's, like, very powerful. I also do think, like, it kind of brings up, like, sometimes that anger is caused from pain. Mm-hmm. And, like, so I think pain and anger go hand in hand. A lot of times when we're in pain, that pain then, like, returns in the form of anger, and we hope, like, we want others to feel that hurt that we feel, but, like, at the end of the day, we end up just hurting ourselves more by holding on to it because it's causing us so much pain. Which I think, you know, I watch these videos and they are very inspiring, but I think it's always easier said than done, you know? Everything is so much easier said than done. It's easy to say, don't get angry about things, or don't get caught up in this, or let go of this. But in practice, everything is so much harder to actually do.
No, of course. It's, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that that you don't try.
Yeah.
You just give up. And just, like, you watch the video, you're like, yeah, whatever. And it's like, you know, because I mean, we live in the age, especially nowadays, like TikTok is like really good at doing this. Like, there's so much information. Like, you know, you slide and next, you know, you're learning about how to make cookies to some crazy situation that happened or whatever it is. And like, there's a constant flow of information. And like, at the end of the day, if you watch a really cool video that shows you how to do something, but you don't act on it, that's almost as pointless as not watching it at all, learning about it.
I think so.
It's like reading a book, and like it's like reading a book about like how to change something in your life, but then like being, oh, that was a lot of really good advice, but then doing the same thing that you were doing yesterday. And I know I'm guilty of this too, because I've read a lot of really, really, really good books out there, watched a lot of like videos like that, motivational content, you know, and like that's why I'm calling myself out on this.
No, but that's what I'm saying though, is like, but it's also like, just to say like, oh, you read this and then act on it. It's also hard to act on it.
Oh, no, sometimes
it's hard to figure out where to start. Like, you might have all the information, but you don't know where to start. And it can be overwhelming at times. Like, I consume a lot of information online, and I learn so much from what I watch and what I consume. But when it comes to making actual changes, it's very difficult because you have to turn those into habits. And I think about how, for instance, we want to start working out more, and like, we'll go to the gym and we'll have a really good day, but the consistency is hard, you know? Yeah,
consistency is everything with everything that you do. Even this podcast, we started off this podcast 13 episodes ago, but we actually, before we even published the video on the YouTube channel and got everything set up on all the podcast platforms, we recorded like 2 or 3 videos that we didn't like, that I think I still have them saved somewhere, but we were like, no, we were trying to make something that was consistent. And now us recording every week, twice a week on Saturdays and Sundays allowed us to grow this thing out consistently and to be where we're at so far right now. And even with doing content creation, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, talking about TikTok.
But that's what I'm saying though too, is like consistency is hard, and like it's not like
I'm not saying it's easy at all.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like sometimes it's so overwhelming, not just to get started, but to maintain consistency. It's the reason that I don't run every day, because it's hard, and some days you're faced with things that you can't expect. Some weeks you have just an awful week and you're tired, and like the thought of doing anything else than the bare minimum is difficult. So I think it's way easier said than done, and it's not something that happens in like a month or even 2 months or even a year. Sometimes this stuff is like a slow process, and I think that like kind of relates back to growth too. Is it's very, we talked about a lot. One, growth isn't linear, but it can be slow and kind of slow and time consuming, and some people might not see what's happening in like the background. They don't see how you're changing and how you're evolving, and that's okay, because you don't grow for other people, you grow for yourself. That's something I've had to learn as I've been trying to become who I want to be and a person that I'm proud of, is that what other people think and what other people see doesn't matter. I'm no longer doing it for the validation of others, but I'm doing it because I want to better myself. And whether people think that I'm bettering myself or not, it's not up to them, because I know what's best for me and I know what's going to make me happy. And I think we live in a world that we seek external validation because we have access to social media, we have access to pretty much everything, and it's easy to want people to see what you're doing and to show your highlight reel, but it's even harder to show like what actually is happening in the background. I think one thing I've always wanted to do was be very vulnerable with people, to show like, yeah, shit's not always easy, and sometimes you're having a night where you just feel like crying, or you are crying, and that's not something that we see a lot of. I also think back to how there were some Instagram comments that I got on like some reels we posted that were, for one made fun of how much I say like, which I realized I've got to stop saying how much you say like in a conversation. Others were like, you have no idea what you're talking about, you're so naive, you're so this. And when I first read them, I was like, I was a little hurt. I was trying not to be, because I know like these are people, these are strangers on the internet. It's not like it's coming from people I know. But at the same time, I'm trying to conceptualize in my mind how people who don't even know me, who are seeing like a snippet of something, could make that, like, could comment on something in such a negative manner, with something, for someone who has the best intention, is trying to just share what I've learned and what I've come to know. And yeah, it's kind of hard, and I'm not an expert in any of this. Me and you, we are not experts in anything that we talk about. We just have experience, we all feel, for instance, in this episode, we all feel anger. We all have experience with anger. Doesn't mean I'm an expert in anger. I didn't get a PhD in anger.
We didn't get like an anger management, person on here, someone who deals with people like that all the time.
But we do some reading, and we do have experience with these emotions. So I just want to share that with people. And that's the hardest thing about growth, is not just consistency and understanding your emotions, but also understanding that it's really just about you. I feel like growth is the one time we get to be selfish, and becoming who we want to be. That's where we get to be selfish. It's not about others. It's about you. It might be about others in the chance that you want to be nicer, you want to portray yourself differently to others. But at the end of the day, if you know what you're doing, what's best for you, to be honest, don't bat an eye at what people are going to say about you. And it's so, like, again, I said, it's way easier said than done, because I still care what people say. But I'm trying all the time too. Cesar's not someone who feels the need to please people, but I feel the need to please people. So like, it's hard, like me and him go back and forth. He's like, oh, just don't read it, or don't care what they say. It's like, it's not that easy for me, because now it's in my mind, and now I know this person thinks this, and I want to change it. But those are things that are out of our control. So we're growing, we're learning. One day it won't matter to me. Today it does, but one day it won't, and that's okay. I know, especially as this podcast grows out on YouTube and all the platforms, like more and more comments come around. Like I've seen like other podcast content creators like
they've always said like it doesn't, it's good to read the comments, good to get feedback,
Yeah.
It really is good because like it might be like, hey,
well, there's a difference between feedback and just hatefulness.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously there's feedback like, hey, I love what you guys are doing. Maybe just the audio, or hey, like Cesar's headphones are backwards, or like, I don't know, like something random, or like, hey, like you had a stain on your shirt, like make sure you wear a clean shirt, or I don't know, something like that. Like,
but if someone commented, hey, you've got a giant head, that's not productive. You can't change the size of your head.
I mean, that's just pure ignorance.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying is like those are the types of comments that I'm getting on my video, or like I will say,
you got a comment about your head?
No.
I was gonna say, I was like, what? Again, I don't read the comments. You're the one that's always reading those.
So we don't get them on the YouTube videos. I post a lot of clips on Instagram Reels,
TikTok,
to bring like awareness and try to get people to watch the full videos. But they're clips, and so there's not as much context in the clips because it can only be a minute. So we're trying to clip like full statements, impactful statements to share online. And some people just don't get the context. And I've been so sweet about replying to people and like trying to understand where they're coming from. Like, we have different opinions. That's okay. I'm just sharing what mine is. I'm not saying I'm right. But people really like to, I feel like hate is more prevalent online. I don't get as many good comments as I do negative comments, which is fine. People can do what they want to do at the end of the day. Like
most people who watch anything, like if there's 100 views on something and one person comments, that's like what, 1% of people that comment on a video. Like, so most people that actually actively watch your content aren't going to leave a negative comment because they're just enjoying it. But then there's people that do leave a good comment, like, hey, like I enjoyed this one.
No, but that's what I'm saying is like the majority of people actually commenting are the ones who want to leave negative comments.
Yeah, I don't know. I do the breakdown of the analytics, but yeah.
But what was that video that you sent me? It was the one where like it was Sean Cannell video.
It was one of Sean Cannell's clips.
Where he was talking about you could have like
the haters, right?
You can have a million great comments, but the one like negative comment is what you're gonna focus on. And I do feel that because it's so easy like to focus on it. I think we focus on it because we don't understand it. Like I don't understand it, at least. I see a lot of videos. Like, mind you, I'm on TikTok all the time. I'm on YouTube. I'm listening to a bunch of stuff. And I also see a bunch of stuff I don't agree with. I never comment on it, though, because I learned from an early age, because I grew up with social media, arguing online with someone is never going to lead anywhere. It doesn't. Like, you commenting on someone's Facebook post you don't agree with, you commenting on TikTok. So I never leave comments on things I don't agree with. Honestly, the only time I do comment on something is when I like it and I enjoy it. I'm like, oh, like, blah.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
So, but people don't have that mindset. Mm-hmm. A lot of people online have the exact opposite. Like, if you read a lot of comments on other creator stuff, you'll see the good ones, but then you see people who are just hating to hate, and that's okay. And I've learned to like try to not let it bother me, but it does a little bit because I feel like my intention here is good and I'm trying to help people. But I'm not always right. I'm still young. I have a lot to learn. So, I do think that some of the people commenting on my videos are a little bit older and they're like, oh, this naive child.
We've ran across people like that in real life.
Yeah.
So it's like by extension online and whatnot. So you'll run across a bunch of people.
And that makes me angry. I feel like that's my one thing that really makes me angry all the time and will always make me angry is the idea that just because you're young that you don't know anything. Like, oh, I've been on this earth for 60 years. You don't know anything because you're only here for 24. It's like, I mean, I know a thing or two. I'm not claiming I know everything, but I definitely have learned a thing or two. And, my generation is the future, so. But, yeah, that makes me angry when people assume just because of my age I'm not, like, smart enough or I don't know enough. And granted, sometimes you do learn things with growing of age. Like, I can't tell you, like, I don't know. What would I not be able to tell you about just because I'm not old enough?
I think we as people, especially living at least in the US, we have the ability to comment on things that we may or may not know about, and it's okay if someone says something that's wrong. It's like, And that's the thing about the internet. It's really difficult to remove all the junk that's in between trying to find the right answer to something.
It's very it's very full of noise.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise. That's what it is. And filtering out all the noise to like I said, you can go through all the comments and then you're like, oh, look, you did such a good job. And then it's like a bunch of noise.
I will say that I have been really loving Instagram because it's been showing me a lot of things that I do enjoy, which is like animal videos, like cute little animals, or just like really motivational things. So I will say I feel like on the new platforms it tailors to your likes and what you want to see. So if you don't want to see the negative stuff, you don't, or just stuff that's not going to add value to your life. I do appreciate that. This went a little off topic,
That's all right,
but that's okay. But yeah, I think the main point is that it's okay to be angry sometimes. Anger does serve that purpose of letting us feel emotions that are meant to be felt, to maybe to motivate us to make change in our lives, or to make us aware of someone that's hurting us. So it does serve. I do think anger will always serve a valuable purpose. It's how I think reaction is the whole thing in this. How we react when we're angry is ultimately what matters.
That's 100%.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I can't say that I'm perfect because I do get angry.
I don't think anyone's perfect.
Yeah, I do get angry. Like when Cesar and I were setting up this podcast, I was getting a little angry about how he was setting it up. And
I mean, it would definitely, like, once we get our own place and stuff like that, would have a dedicated room where we just literally hit record.
Yeah,
like,
I think Cesar and I are in growing pains right now.
Because we have to move this all the time, so like, there's always like the camera's not always gonna be in the same spot. So I adjust it in post anyways, even if it's like wide.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So better to have a wider shot.
But like Cesar and I, I think we get angry at each other sometimes.
Yeah, no, being honest, we do.
Yeah.
Over like the littlest things. And
it's always little things. I don't think it's ever really big things.
And my thing is just, as long as you don't stay angry. I mean, that's one thing I was telling her about.
There's always that, like, don't go to bed angry.
Yeah, don't go to bed angry. Like, it's just like, oh, what was that?
I will say, though, I actually wanted to bring this up, so I'm glad you brought up don't go to bed angry. Oh, I mean, I guess I brought up don't go to bed angry. Like, not staying angry. However, I do think also anger serves a valuable purpose. Like, for instance, if, like, I stay getting angry for you, like, all the time, right? But then one day I'm just not angry anymore. There's no emotion. That might actually show a lack of, like, I no longer care. And you want someone to care. Like, when someone stopped caring, that's also, like, a negative thing. Like, it's like, oh, they've lost, like, they don't even care anymore. This is bad. Because you should want someone to care. Whether that emotion is anger or not, you should want them to feel something. And if they just stop feeling anything, that's a bad sign.
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually, like, because I think I was listening to a podcast, or I can't even remember where it was. It might have been a TikTok. But they were saying, like, there's that saying, like, don't go to bed angry. But some people are like, no, like, go to bed angry because it still means that you care. Like,
no, I mean, I guess my whole thing is, like, reconcile those differences before you go to bed. Like, it's like, if you're, like, figure out what caused the anger. And then, like, that's my whole thing. It's like, don't be like, you know what, screw you, and just, like, go to sleep, like.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes when I'm trying to have a talk before bed, you're like, Sonny, I'm tired.
I don't do that anymore. I used to do that because legitimately it would be like at 3 a.m. because you would get home from. I'm sorry this is dragged on, but you'd get home from Target like at 1 a.m. sometimes, and you want to talk about something, and I'm like, it's 2 a.m. like, and then I need to get up like at 7 to go work, or 8 o'clock, and like I'd be like, I just need to go to bed, and that's where that would end up leading. It's
so
just
like, I'm tired. I'm so tired. And I'm like, well, I'm mad and I want to talk about it. But I think sometimes too, like, there's just situations where the concept or the situation is too big to, like, resolve. Like, for instance, before bed. Luckily, I don't think we have that many arguments where it's like,
no, we've kind of,
I'm gonna stay angry.
Yeah. Also, the time, I'm telling you, other thing too, just you working at Target, like, just. Yeah, you'd get home. It's also like where I was at in my life. Yeah. The situation, I was not happy with my situation. So a lot of times, again, like, that's what I'm saying. The negative part of, like, anger is that it's sometimes because the only emotion you feel. So
when I was at Target, it started to become the only thing I felt because so many things made me so upset. Like, so mad. And I'm like, oh. And whenever I start to feel that now, like, if I start to feel myself getting annoyed, because also, like, annoyance also kind of leads to anger sometimes. If I start feeling myself getting annoyed about something that really shouldn't annoy me or at someone, I'm just like, Sonny, take a step back. Is this logical? Why are you feeling this way? Because honestly, in that moment, it's not really beneficial to feel that way, you know?
Yeah.
So... yeah, but I do think it shows that you care. If you're angry, it shows that you care, so get angry, you know? Get angry! Woo! Hulkman! But I think Cesar and I, when we get angry at each other, like, we look at each other and just like, okay, like, are we done? Like, you know, Cesar kind of lets me just, like...
Vent.
And then he'll be like, okay, like... and then we'll kind of look at it, like, for instance... we were kind of arguing before this podcast started, still about the, thing that he swears he saw in one of the bios that I had only credited myself and not him, which he wasn't mad about, but I was mad because he thought I did it, and I was like, oh. But we were arguing about it, and before we started, I was like, look, I can't record if we're going to be angry at each other, ironically. I was like, I cannot do this if we're going to sit here angry, because that's not going to be good. And so I was like...
and I understand that, too, because you want to be in, like, a good headspace to talk about this. So.
And so it was like, are we good? I was like, you stop being butt-faced. Like...
butt-faced.
And so, like, we had to, like, resolve that before... I'm, like, literally laughing so hard I'm crying. Oh my gosh. But yeah, and, like... I also think it has to do, like, just on this last point, it has to do with how we grew up to and how, like, if your parents got angry at you a lot, how they dealt with their emotions. I think in my family specifically, that's kind of how we dealt with our emotions, was through anger. Like, you could tell when my mom was mad or upset. You could tell when my dad was mad or upset, especially how they reacted towards us when they felt that way. And I feel like that's kind of how I learned. So I'm learning how to not do that now as an adult, of, like, not to let my anger, like, consume me. I think that's my issue sometimes, is it consumes you. You feel it's all you feel. You're like, oh, I'm so angry, I don't know what to do. All I think, something that honestly does cool my anger down, though, is when I think of the Hulk and I'm like, Hulk smash! You know, like Hulk smash! Sonny smash!
That's what he smashed.
But you know how that feels? Like, how did your parents, like, growing up, how did they, like, portray anger? I feel like I've never seen your parents angry.
I mean...
not, like, really angry.
No, I mean, growing up, you know, whenever... It was... The thing is, I would attribute, like, how I react to situations because of my dad. Because my dad, whenever he would get mad, he would actually show his like... he was annoyed by something, whether it was something that we did, whether, like, I broke something. Usually it was because I broke something, or whether it was because, like, he didn't want me being in like, doing something. Like, for example, I remember working on, he was working on his truck outside of the house one day when I was, like, I think, like, 3rd grade or something. And he had blamed me for breaking something. And I was like, I didn't do it, though. He accidentally, like, did something wrong, and, like the caliper broke on the car. And he was like, you touched it. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I was just here. So, like, but anyways, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, he would be the one to get the most angry, where my mom would be the one to try to calm the situation down. So, like, it was like a balance of yin and yang. Like, they were never get angry at each other. If they ever did, it was over something like something small. You know, it was never something, like, big to the point where, like, they never got angry to, like, where when somebody just left the house. You know, it was always like, we gotta talk about this, you know. And we saw that growing up, you know. They would get over, one would get angry, my dad would get angry, and then my mom would be like, well, no, it's like this, and then they would reconcile right there, and we would see that. So, like, to me, that's why I'm like, man, I understand my dad to get angry. I never want to get angry like that. So, like, I'm always trying to, like, just, you know, be the calming person. I think I get that from my mom. So
yeah,
try to calm things down. So.
I feel like my parents took turns. Like, if my dad was angry, my mom would try to calm him down. But if my mom was angry, my dad would try to calm my mom down, which also didn't work because no one likes being told to calm down.
Yeah. I mean, of course, someone's, like, telling you, if it's saying calm down, it's never going to fix the situation. It's always like, it should be like, hey, what's going on? You know, that's definitely one thing. That's one thing that I've learned. It's always like, why are you feeling this way? It's the same thing way you would tell a child, Like, what happened? You know?
The other thing about me when I'm angry is it often leads to me crying, because my go-to, like, reaction to anything, whether it's happiness, sadness, anger, overwhelming, like, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, it's tears. Like, and it's like, honestly, I honestly think people growing up thought I did it on purpose, but no, I can't control. When I feel so, like, an emotion strongly, it just starts, and I'm like, stop it, Sonny. Especially when you, like, when you argue with someone and you start crying, it's like, oh, I'm ruining it. But, yeah, so.
Again, you're really passionate about things.
I'm just way too passionate. It's just, I'm like a little firecracker, you know. I try not to have a short fuse, but sometimes, man. It's okay to be angry sometimes. We all get angry. Just be cautious of how you react in those situations of extreme anger. Don't cut people off. Be nice to retail workers. Well, be nice to everyone, honestly.
Yeah, just be nice.
Just be a nice person. And it's easier said than done, because some people really test your patience. But yeah, we are so glad if you made it to the end of the episode. We now have 21 great subscribers on our YouTube channel. I'm not really sure how many people listen on other podcast platforms, but we are available on most podcast platforms. We're definitely trying to figure out how we can become more widely available on all the ones that exist out there. Just kind of extensive process. And yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, please like, subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. We post clips from the podcast on there. So if you want a short form version of what we talk about, go ahead over there. Cesar and I really love to do this. It's something we're going to continue to do, and we just hope that we can grow this out and grow with you guys and bring on other guests too. I think that's our goal. I've had the opportunity, obviously, to have guests in my network, like my CEO and my sister. I'm also going to be reaching out to some people in the coming weeks to come on the show to talk about other things. I'm really trying to get Tim Chiusano on it.
Yeah.
I have had conversations with him. I just really want to. He'd have so much knowledge to spew about growth. So thank you for making it to the end of the episode. Like I said, we love doing this. This has been Growing Together with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you again next week.
See you guys later.